Welcome back to This Live, this Sunday talk show. We've been looking at the electricity sector in Nigeria. And in the meantime, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has imposed a fine of 200 million naira on Abuja Electricity Distribution PLC, Abuja Disco, over the violation of the new tariff regime. According to the commission, Abuja Disco was penalized for failing to adhere to its tariff guidelines, creating a stir among consumers and industry stakeholders alike. The agency said the decision follows a detailed review and customer feedback, which revealed that AEDC, as the company is otherwise known, had applied the new tariff to all customer bands, contrary to the order, which was designed to ensure fair billing practices. It therefore mandated AEDC to reimburse all customers in the bands B, C, D, and E. They were billed above the allowed customer categories and or tariff bands provided in the order. Now, Beks Dagogo-Jack, a civil engineer, technocrat, entrepreneur, and public servant, who once served as chairman Nigerian Presidential Task Force on Power, joins me. Good to see you, Mr. Beks Dagogo-Jack. Thank you for coming on This Live, the morning show. You were there at the very beginning. You were chairman of the process. You were co-chairman of Gas to Power. What do you think of this latest development, the NERC providing justifications? They provided justifications. They have said inflation, they have said rising cost of gas, they have talked about the fact that the discos are indebted, they've talked about how this latest move will solve liquidity problem. They've given, a plethora of reasons why this is inevitable, including timing, including issues about gas and all of that, and how this will translate into the efficiency of the national grid. You were chairman of the National Body on Power. You were vice chairman of the Gas to Power transmission. Let's start by asking you, what do you think of this latest move?
Thank you, Ruben. Thanks for having me. So far as tariff is concerned, it's a market phenomenon. It's really more a market phenomenon than a political issue. There are political components of it because every elected government wants to be a listening government, wants to hear what the people are saying and what they're feeling. But tariff stands on its own as a commercial and a market instrument for ensuring that all parties get their money's worth, both the producers and the consumers. The particular feature that has been announced is, in my opinion, a bit simplified. I support the idea of people paying more so that the sector will not collapse. It is in practicing it, putting it in practice, that we might run into problem. Because you know that the reason why people have 20 hours of supply is a technical issue. It's not a commercial issue, which means the area where they live has the right kind of infrastructure upgrade to guarantee a certain level of supply. So they don't have regular trip-offs, they don't have poor wiring connections, they don't have the complications that other people have, quality transformers. Now, flip to the next page. If in that area where there are 20 hours of supply, where there is 20 hours of supply, you have the big men who have 6 air conditioners, 2 washing machines, 1 dryer, all sorts of heavy-duty equipment, and another guy who lives in 2 bedrooms with a fan and uses a small gas cooker or even does not even use electricity, but he has to pay the same because it's in the same band. So using the band blindly because you are guaranteeing 20-hour supply, and to that extent, the person who is on the lower end of the economy that is struggling to make ends meet is forced to pay the same rate, is a little inequitable, if you ask me. And you know, those are the kind of things you want to look into when you are setting tariff. So for me, a tariff should be driven by demand, quote unquote, rather than by supply. So the person who tends to take more is more dependent on the power. He has an incentive to pay more. Now, the other side of this challenge, if you ask me, is that you generate a higher quantum of unwilling customers. People now willing to bypass meter, people now willing to dodge payments, people doing things that they shouldn't do because suddenly there's a big leap from what their former bill to the next bill. When that happens, the net impact is that eventually you collect less. You run into higher collection losses. Okay. And then whatever you're seeking to achieve at the end of the day becomes a problem.
Okay, Mr. Dagogo-Jack, a number of follow-up questions from what you have said. Now, you are saying that this customer approach that is based on customer bands is a bit problematic. Why is it so? And what alternatives are observable, are possible? Because if they say customer A band, I've seen stories in the papers, you know, people publishing, oh, in Lagos, this is a customer A band. In Ibadan, or your state, this is a customer A band. And I've had people say, even in those customer A bands, nobody has ever received 20 hours of electricity. What is the guarantee that they will get 20 hours of electricity? I mean, the consumers have said that's problematic. It will not work. Now, as a sector area expert, are there alternatives that they could have considered?
Yeah. First and foremost, every electricity business is a utility business. A utility business is 100% customer focused. If the customer is not the basis of your supply strategy, your pricing strategy, then you are not doing the right thing. So I have no problem with focusing on the customer. I have a problem with asking the customer to pay more than is his fair capacity to pay, and for that reason triggering other more illegal approaches that our customers here are very well known to do. So if it is how do we serve the customer in such a way that the customer with a higher demand profile pays more, not the customer that you have given a lot of supply does not even take it up, but you are saying even if it takes, 10, if you like, small capacity of electricity, it has to pay a much higher rate. So it is that justice that I'm saying is lacking. Can we have another solution waiting that nobody wants to touch that will address it? It's not immediate. It's heavily technology driven. I've known in other jurisdictions where they keep changing, it's dynamic, changing your tariff based on your historical consumption pattern. So they can put you on a 3 or 4 month tariff evaluation window. And at the end of that period, they are pretty much sure that based on your consumption pattern, you qualify to and you have to prove otherwise because they use your own data to characterize you as a consumer. It's more scientific, it requires more investment on the technology side. You follow that model to say, this is a low-income consumer, this is a high-income consumer. You can't go wrong because their data brings the information back to you.
Well, Engineer Dagogo-Jack, the federal government is talking about subsidy. They say that they are spending about 2.29 trillion naira annually on subsidy. Now, this is a sector where all the assets have been bought. Can you comment on this subsidy issue? If you have sold the assets and you have discos, 11 of them I think, then you have gencos, you have transmission. Transmission is held by the federal government. Can the federal government of Nigeria talk legitimately about subsidy? And this subsidy they talk about, is it real? Is it deceptive? This is a phantom subsidy. What are we dealing with here?
Ruben, I'll come on this subject from two angles. I like you to watch the way I approach it. From one angle, those who argue that subsidy in the electricity sector is a gift to the licensees, to the discos and all that, they are totally wrong. Because I will flip them immediately over to the subsidy that we enjoyed for decades in the petroleum sector, where every petrol station is owned by an individual. Every petrol station or petroleum company were pretty much all privatized. So that argument, subsidy has nothing to do with the ownership of the operating assets in its nature. It's in the way of bridging the cost for the consumer. I just want that to be cleared. But on the subject of subsidy, I have serious reservations, especially because the president himself has boldly, what many others could not do, boldly decided to take our economy into a more cost-reflective plane, where there are no dubious overlays or underlays of prices in the foreign exchange window, in the petroleum pricing. So if you're going in one direction and anybody begins to flip you to go the opposite direction, you have to hold back and check a little bit. So far as I'm concerned, subsidy, if you are equalizing the economy on a realistic cost basis, becomes a confusion, an aberration. More than that, every government, and I know if the president were so advised, he will stick to it, because I see that he likes to do things that he can defend. Every government should look for using subsidy as a production incentive. So they have the benefit on the GDP side of it. They have the benefit on the employment side of it. But to subsidize consumption is, for want of better description, is extremely lazy. It doesn't add any value to the system. It also has inherent deficiencies by way of promoting corruption in the bureaucracy. Between those who are providing the service and the bureaucracy, they collude. And the end loser is the customer, who you think you are subsidizing. So okay. The earlier we forget about subsidy as a model for sharing, if you like, redistributing wealth, the earlier we do that, the better, if you ask me.
Okay, Engineer Dagogo-Jack, I mean, you were there at the very beginning. You were chairman of Task Force on Power, you were co-chairman of Gas to Power and all of that. One of the things that the present administration is saying is that the Jonathan administration caused the problem because you guys didn't look at the basic issues from the even the law of 2015, the National Electricity Process Law, of 2015. And that this is what this government, the Tinubu administration, is dealing with. Now, what do you have to say in defense? Because they have consistently insisted that the vision, the mission was the problem, and that this is what the Tinubu administration is trying to defend. You were a principal person in that regard. They even say the price of gas has gone up. It's one of the reasons why, these new tariffs have to be introduced. Because from the very beginning, the National Electricity Reform Act of 2015 was mismanaged. What do you have to say in defense of what you did as a principal player in that sector.
Yeah, Ruben, probably I'm not the best advocate for that defense, if you ask me. I want to wonder who are the principal players in that agenda: the National Council for Privatization, the BPE, the Minister of Power. These are the people who are the executioners, who are actually ombudsmen to make sure that they stayed in line. But that does not take away from the fact that I can speak to why we are here. As somebody who was involved in that journey, I am very, very sad, as a Nigerian too, that we have mismanaged a national reform agenda bigger than what happened in the telecom, to the point where we are in such a mess. The opportunity that we got in that reform is bigger than the telecom reform. And the telecom reform today, everybody is clapping for it. Why was that so? As an analyst, and I ask other people to repeat me or say something different. The problem is that reform pretty much was handed over as a baby in 2015 to the last administration. So I won't even say that it is the Tinubu administration that is saying good luck administration did this or that. In fact, it was the Buhari administration that made that their sing-song, that all the problems of the power sector was inherited by them. Now, when you hand over a sector to new hands, it is like a baby. It needs a lot of close marking. What we witnessed, and not unless Nigerians want to lie about it, what we witnessed in 2015 and onwards was a complete abandonment of that reform, allowing that reform to derail into a tailspin, into a quicksand. And up till now, it is still trying to find its feet. It is when the threat of total darkness, because of abandoning the reform, confronted that administration, that they started throwing money at the problem. Whereas money was not just necessarily the problem. Process was not there. Structure was not there. Transparency was not there. You heard about the Siemens project, Presidential Power Initiative. Up till today, experts and informed people like me in the sector don't have an idea what has been done and what is yet to be done. And promises were made that by 2025, we will get to at least 15,000 megawatts of electricity. This is 2024. We are still on the 4,500 we handed over, that was handed over to the Buhari administration. So people must be able to say the truth. People must say the truth. After 8 years, you are back to the same quality of quantity of production. So somebody must be honest. What happened in 8 years, apart from looking for an excuse? At the time we left, we had about 12,000 megawatts of constructed and commissioned power generation, on the basis of which you needed to do add-ons on the transmission and distribution side to take up all of that. Of course, on the regulatory as well as the market management side as well. So, but all of this need to be done to that baby, which was handed over in 2015. It was not done. So to now say Tinubu administration said this or that, really, it's like papering over what the problem is. Between Tinubu administration and Jonathan administration, there was 8 years in which Nigerians were supposed to make improvement, see improvement in power sector. They didn't see it. As I speak with you today, we are recording the same number of system collapses. We are recording the same level of average daily supply that we witnessed in 2015. So let the story be told. But like I opened, there were people who owned this process way more than I did. And their being quiet is lending false credence to the narrative that there was something fundamentally wrong with a reform that was acclaimed by the Wall Street Journal, by The Economist, as one of the most ambitious reform agenda of its own time. Okay. There is no reform that is perfect, Mr. Ruben. Every reform has phases of maturity. Every reform has waves of maturity. The first wave, by the second wave, you will be surprised that all the all the people who bought the assets in the first phase you can't see them again because a second wave has come in. Why the waves keeps coming in is that there is a backbone, there's a government backbone that gives confidence for the different set of investors to come in and take out those that bought it the first time. It's a willing buyer, willing seller. Okay. So if there is no willing buyer, you can't sell. So, but nobody looked after the baby enough for the second wave and the third wave to take place. Okay. And that is why we are here. We're still struggling in the first wave.
Engineer Dagogo-Jack, just one very small question I would like you to respond to briefly as I move on. Do you think that President Tinubu knows what it takes to solve the problem in the electricity sector? It's one thing to say, we are doing this, we are doing this, we are doing that. Will it work? Briefly.
Yeah. No, in Nigeria, we are in such an economically weak state that our politics has been totally compromised. So even if I say A or B, it is what people will interpret or not interpret. So we are in that very weak, if you like, political economic situation. But I can tell you that for me personally, I would have wished that in 2015, it was Tinubu that succeeded Jonathan. Because he has shown to us his capacity to take on risk that will work for the country. He may not be all right, but taking that risk and fighting himself out of that risk and giving us a better system, for me, is far better than somebody who didn't do anything, who just watched the system collapse on our head. So if you ask me, is he coming at the right time? There is no such thing as the right time, but he's coming at a very, very difficult time. He says he will do it. We have to give him time to see that he was faithful in doing what he should do. And he also listens from the data we get from the public space. So if people are giving him the right feedback and saying, no, this is right, this is wrong, we may be able to get out of the power sector. But because it has derailed for so many years, I'm talking 8 years, to reset such a reform is a very difficult task because there are many moving parts. You're trying to face this, others are getting out of your grip. But because of his boldness, and if everybody around him were to commit to make him succeed, not to be there for themselves, I see that we couldn't get a bolder person handling such a challenge. That would be my opinion. Personal.
Thank you very much, and Engineer Beks, Dagogo-Jack, for joining us on This Is Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Thank you very much for your insights on the electricity problem in Nigeria.